The Disruptive Dozen is a rank-ordered list of 12 closed-to-market cutting-edge technologies that leading Mass General Brigham faculty feel will have the greatest impact on healthcare in the next 18 months. Number 3. Digital management of chronic disease. The burden of chronic diseases is growing, especially in the U.S., squeezing healthcare providers and fueling a dramatic rise in healthcare costs. This problem is likely to worsen in the coming decades, which will require new ideas to help rein in health spending. A team in Boston has developed a new approach that could help reinvent chronic disease care. Instead of face-to-face visits, it involves frequent remote interactions with patients, enabled by AI and digital device technology to help them manage their medications, such as blood pressure and lipid-lowering drugs for cardiovascular disease. The goal is not to only streamline how care is delivered, but also provide better care and an improved overall experience for patients. This approach also re-envisions who provides care and how often. With a multidisciplinary team that includes patient navigators, pharmacists, and nurses, and managed by a physician, the new care model makes it possible to provide more frequent interactions and virtual visits with patients while reducing the overall burden on physicians. Chatbots are another digital tool that could also help modernize chronic disease management. These conversational AI technologies enable users to gather information using text or voice-based interactions. Their use exploded during the COVID-19 pandemic, opening the door to a wider deployment in healthcare. Chatbots can streamline an array of healthcare tasks, helping patients locate a doctor, schedule appointments, and determine if their symptoms are serious enough to seek medical care. They can also support clinicians by serving as virtual assistants. While these tools need improvement and come with important ethical and privacy concerns that must be addressed, they represent an important addition to the growing arsenal of digital tools for enhancing chronic disease care.
So I think one of the things that is obvious, even from the last few weeks and months in the current coronavirus pandemic, is that patients really quite like remote care because it helps them manage their chronic disease in the context of the rest of their lives. I think we've felt that this is something whose time might eventually come and that it might take some time for it to evolve and to deploy, partly because the public has been, I think, quite keen to maintain the current relationships with their physicians. One of the interesting things is that these types of remote programs actually improve the connectivity that patients feel with their physicians and the healthcare system. It also, as I alluded to, really does empower the patients to become more and more engaged in their care. And I think when you put those two things together, along with the objective evidence that these technologies actually improve the rigor of the deployment of known effective preventative therapies and treatments, and also that they significantly reduce the variation in that care, I think you start to see them as great equalizers. They also, I think, offer a unique opportunity for patients to become much more familiar with what's happening to them. Instead of being passive actors, they can become very active. And I believe that these technologies, whether the underlying algorithms, the ways in which they interact with the traditional system, the ways in which they obtain their care in completely different venues potentially, these are all features that we will look back and wonder why they had not been deployed many, many years ago. I think in the long run, one of the most important things for us to do as we think about how these technologies are deployed is how do we make them part of a system that has much longer term implications. You can imagine how much more efficiently the world would have been able to deal with the current pandemic if information was being systematically collected as just part of routine care. I think that's one of the ways that we've envisaged that these tools and technologies can be deployed, is as part of the foundation for a much more structured way of collecting information about individuals and giving that information to those individuals to empower them as they manage their wellness and then their healthcare as their needs change. I think the other areas where this type of approach can be really reinforced and strengthened are when you start to add in information from remote sensors, whether those are wearables or sensors in somebody's home or in their bathroom scale or in their mirror or in their car, you begin to realize how collecting more information about yourself in a private and secure fashion can again be a really important piece of understanding your health and wellness. And if that information can be gathered in a way that the system can then learn about you over time, suddenly you have the ability to trigger interventions, not when you feel unwell or go to see your physician, but when the actual biology starts to change. And this vision for triggered care is actually something I think that all of us have hoped we would see in our lifetimes, and it's finally becoming a reality. As part of the learning aspects of this type of system, you can imagine how much like digital operations in other parts of our lives improve continuously. It is possible to imagine a healthcare system that is also doing that, improving continuously by design. Whether it's through what's called A/B testing to understand which of two equivalent things is the most efficient, or whether it's even in remote randomized controlled trials of new therapies. The possibility to accelerate the way in which we discover and how quickly we discover the results of new interventions is another powerful impetus for implementing this type of learning health system.